you were saying that we should maybe have a chat around customer service today.
Yeah, I think.
Do you want to just bring your head up a bit, because I can only that's it.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. No, I need it higher. That thing isn't high enough. Then it's still the challenge of being 6'9". Yeah. Yeah, Nikki said about that. She wanted to get me a phone holder because I hold the phone.
Yeah.
Where am I going to put it? Where it's high enough? If I get to suspend it from the ceiling or something.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I was thinking about it actually, because I think it was triggered yesterday again, because I've got to get the ring resized.
Yeah.
So they were doing that, and the collection was meant to be yesterday. And so I spent all day indoors yesterday. I gave them a window and said, look, 10 till 2, because then I have to do, various other things, school runs and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And it got to about 5 to 2.
Yeah.
And I called them and said, I'm a bit worried. All right, I've built in another hour, but I need to go pick my son up from school. And I've not even heard from anyone, no message to say it's going to be this window and all the rest of it. I know they use DPD. So he was really apologetic, and he said, I'm going to look into that for you. I've got to speak to our operations team. And I said, I'm a bit just disappointed that I've wasted a whole day so far. Hopefully you can get it resolved. Anyway, he said, I'll call you back. And I said, well, when? And he said, oh, it would definitely be today. I said, okay, fine. And off he went. Anyway, about half an hour later, I had a text message from DPD come through saying they're going to pick it up today in this window.
Right.
And then about half hour after that, I had a call from him saying, oh, right, okay, I've looked into this. I went, yeah, I know, I've already heard.
Yeah.
I heard it from DPD. I said, and I imagine there's some kind of mistake your end and it's not been booked properly, is it? They go, well, we said our operations team were trying to get to the bottom of it, and it was all this waffle. And I said, I know this works. I said, you've told me that it's going to be arranged and no one's arranged it. DPD are pretty reliable. I said, I've wasted an entire day as a result. And it, and this has been booked in, they called me, it was booked in from something like the 3rd of January, and they assured me, and I had an email confirmation. Yeah. And somewhere along that line, someone's not bothered doing the actual work.
So when that happens, because that's happened to me. I mean, it's happened to my son over Christmas. So my son ordered a really nice present for his fiance. Had to come from France, and that it was coming through one of the big delivery, companies. They lost it, and so he then got caught between, because the company he bought it from was saying, well, it's not our fault, we gave it.
The delivery company.
And then the delivery company, which is like big international company, don't give two hoots, right? Yeah. And actually the big lesson for him was he paid for it on his bank. So he bought it on his bank card.
Yeah.
And I've been saying to him, and I'm not a great believer in credit as such, but I do believe in the utility of credit cards, because I said, if you'd been able to buy it on a credit card, you could have just phoned up the credit card company, and then it's their problem. It's not your problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Your problem is you've now, the money's out of your account and you can't get it back.
Yeah.
So he's now having to wade through that and hope that he's going to get some resolution. So, in relation to your wasted day, I mean, are you looking for some sort of compensation for that? Because that's always the thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I did. When they were very apologetic on the second call, I said, well, that's okay. I said, because you're going to make it up to me, aren't you?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. Now I've got another call with them once they receive the package that's been collected. But I think obviously I'll have that conversation, but it is a lost day, because there's other things I needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I've had to shelve and all the rest of it. Because I can't miss it, because it's a collection. It's not like a delivery where they'll leave it around the corner.
Yeah.
I've got to physically give them something.
Yeah, well, I think we've all been in that situation now, haven't we? It's like,
massively. Literally 2 days earlier, I'd had the same situation on the reverse. It was a delivery, but I'd ordered some stuff for Nikki for a holiday, for it to arrive in time. And I messaged her, I think it was due on the Sunday actually. And I messaged her and said, look, it's going to be delivered between this time. I know you're not there.
Right.
You know, again, it's another, you know, big delivery company. Anyway, I had the confirmation of delivery and they sent me a picture of where they put it.
Oh, brilliant.
I sent that on to her and she said, that's not where I live. So I've got no idea where that went. But they just tucked it into some like mailbox.
Yeah.
It was her number, but not her building.
Yeah.
And so I had to then deal with the company, and then everyone's pointing fingers at each other saying, well, it's not us, it's the delivery company. And, you know, it's just crazy.
I mean, this is such a big deal now, but I think it's like, I mean, I do get it. If you're running a big organization and you got thousands of deliveries a day, I mean, keeping track, I mean, it is a big logistical issue, but I think it's like, it does come down to how much you care, really, doesn't it? I mean,
always.
And caring costs money. It doesn't matter what way you think about it. If you're going to care, actually, you've got to put money into caring. And I think ultimately that's why these businesses don't do it, because they look at it and they think, okay, well, we'll do it on a who shouts the loudest basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're in a, okay, it's not a monopoly, what's it called, you know, like there's only like 3 or 4 major companies that you can use.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, if you want to have that delivery experience, then you've only got limited places you can go.
Yeah, and they've all got different strengths and weaknesses as well. You know, all of them, none of them are perfect, you know, and I'm sure some of them are more expensive than others and all that sort of stuff.
But I think it does come down to this idea of, are you prepared to sort of invest in your caring? And I think this is, I think there's a much broader principle here. When you really think about customer care in its totally broadest sense, it's like, you could actually flip it on its head and say, like, as an individual, like if I imagine myself in all my relationships, whether they're personal or business, professional, whatever way you want to look at it, and I think, okay, when I think about all my commitments, and do I really give 100% customer care? If I was to think of all my relationships as customers, do I live up to that? And that's actually, that's a hell of a question. I don't think
huge, because there's always a trade-off with that stuff as well. I mean, you know, if you take the example of the guy who delivered it to the wrong building, let's take him as an example. You know, even based on the conversation I just had with the collection guy today, you know, there is a trade-off or a competition about caring, because he's sitting there thinking, you know, I care that I deliver the, you know, the product to the right address. But how does that compete against caring about finishing early or promptly to see his family or whatever it might be, because of the pressure they're under? And so there's this constant battle.
Yeah, but you see, I'd take issue with you on that. See, what I think that guy did, I don't think he cared about delivering it to the right address. What I think he cared about was following the company procedure, which is like, probably he's probably got 300 deliveries to make in the day. So it's like he's literally running from his van, get it done as quick as possible, take the photo, send it, bang, done. He's ticked the boxes. Has he checked that he's put it in the right place? No, he hasn't. So it's like, actually there is a disconnect between what he's caring about, and I think this is the problem. You know, and this is like where these programs, particularly around like what it's like to work for Amazon, you know, you must have seen some of these programs on TV, but it's how do you deal with that sort of time pressure? And it's like, where does that come from? Where it's like, well, none of us want to pay for our delivery. So, you know, you buy off Amazon, and what's the general charge? If you buy a book off Amazon, the delivery charge for the next day delivery is like £2.90.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you couldn't put it in the post office and get next day delivery. You go to the post office and pay for next day delivery. It's about £6 or £7, I think, and it might even be 11 quid if you want it signed for.
Yeah, it depends on what it is. And so, even then, there's still no guarantees.
No. So I mean, obviously we're using this idea of delivery to sort of focus on the idea of customer care, but I think it's such a principle that we look. You go back. I mean, I don't know. Do you remember the days of Amstrad, Alan Sugar's first business? Yeah. So, I mean, there was no concept of customer care. His whole business, the way he started that was like buy it in cheap from China.
Yeah.
Like, didn't matter whether it worked or not. If it didn't work, he had no problem. Just like bring it back and change it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, he revolutionized the market and he brought cheap electronics into the country.
Yeah.
But what it revealed to people is actually they don't want that level of shit service, you know, and so that's why Amstrad doesn't exist today. Or if it does, it's in a different form. I don't know. I haven't checked. So, but it is certainly not in the form it was.
No, it's not a dominant force, is it?
And you know, you've only got to look at the emergence of brands like Apple, Samsung, you know, and all the other quality brands that are out there. People are much more willing to pay for quality.
Well, it's paying for an experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
As well as the product and the quality, it's the experience that goes with that hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think that's and people will pay for that. You know, would I pay more to have had a better service yesterday, have that guy arrive yesterday instead of today? So it didn't cost, of course I would have. You know, would I have paid more to ensure that delivery arrived at the right address?
Yeah.
Because it was time critical. Yeah, of course I would have.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, there are pressures created by companies like Amazon because of the, you know, that they offer this Prime service and it's a cheaper delivery mechanism, delivery method, and you know, I've noticed that other companies are doing the same. ASOS do the same. Next now do the same, where you can pay like an annual subscription and it gets you unlimited deliveries for free, and it's always next day delivery. But it's, you know, cheap is expensive, isn't it? You do want the service. You just want the assurance.
If you look at that, I mean, Amazon gets a lot of shit, but I have to say, in my experience, Amazon has the best customer service out there, because I've had a situation. I've got a Prime account, right?
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant concept because there's no way that I use enough deliveries from Amazon to cover the cost of my Prime membership.
Yeah.
Okay, I know there's other stuff like you've got the videos and you've got the music and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, you know, essentially, why do most people have Prime? It's got to be for the delivery, hasn't it? I would say that would be my guess. Maybe for the video, but I don't know. But the thing about you know, when you've got a Prime account, you can get in touch with somebody. You can speak to somebody at Amazon. They've got a process, and every time I've done it, I have spoken to a human being within 30 seconds of hitting that dial number, and had some sort of resolution. And usually it's a resolution in my favor, and it's quick. So, you know, I know there's lots and lots of detractors of Jeff Bezos and his,
of course,
all these billions and all that sort of stuff, and that jealousy mentality. But actually, he has created what he set out to do, which is to create the most customer-centric business on earth. And I haven't come across another business that gets close to it from that perspective.
No, me neither. No, there's always various loopholes, you know, hoops you have to jump through. In order to get a resolution, and then a lot of the time they just sort of descend into finger pointing, like we said earlier. You know, it's not us, it's them. It's, you know, and I've had that with global brands where they've just said, well, you know, it's left our warehouse. Well,
that's what happened
anymore.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened to my son. You know, and that was a global brand, at a high level. You know, it's not a low level brand either. It's a, you know, one of the brands you'd say is a quality brand, but. But you know, I think it's like bringing all that back. How does that relate to you, me, and our day-to-day lives? It's like, you know, what are the lessons that we can take from that? Because, you know, I think about, you know, when I'm working with clients, I always aim to over deliver. You know, and it's like, well, I do over deliver. And I can over deliver at the moment because of the scale of the business. But I constantly think about that as it starts to scale. You know, what are how do you maintain that? Because
Yeah.
What I know is it's going to be very challenging to maintain the same level of service that I offer the current clients.
Yeah.
You know, as the business gets bigger.
Yeah.
And I don't want to offer anything less. So I think getting past that as a barrier is huge for any business.
Yeah, and the problem is that bar as well is always on the move upwards. You know, it might not necessarily be down to your own activities. You know, like going back to people like Amazon with this whole next day delivery. You know, being you know, probably 80% of the time with whatever they offer. That put an immense pressure on other companies to then deliver the same.
Yeah,
because otherwise people would just go Amazon.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these purchases are emotional purchases, and people want it there and then. They want it as early as possible. If they want to wait for 2 weeks, then they might not be as interested in it. And so, you know, it's that notion of, you know, the sort of value, you know, the neutral value. That neutral level of value is always on the increase, and it might not always be you driving it. So, you know, your over delivery to your clients becomes the norm.
And it has done, definitely.
And therefore you then have to look how you continue to over deliver.
Yeah. And I'm in that position. I know I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same, you know, and those sorts of things, they're only ever missed when they're absent. You know,
I think there's another interesting aspect to this as well, which is probably a deeper, more global psychological issue. And that's the whole issue of instant gratification. You know, we live in an instant gratification society now. It's like, I want it now, you know, and never before in history have we had that. There's always been some sense of delay between wanting and getting.
Absolutely.
And to all intents and purposes, that's been eradicated now. And I think there's huge implications for that. And it's, in some sense, in some ways, it's a good thing. But actually, I think in a lot of ways, it's a bad thing, because it's well known. You know, there's lots of psychological, you know, proven scientific experiments out there that say that there is benefit, long-term benefit, to actually delaying your gratification.
Yeah.
And being able to control that drive within you to be gratified in the moment. And if you can do that, and if you can suspend that need to be gratified, it enables you to conceptualize and take on bigger challenges, because bigger challenges and bigger ideals take time to come to fruition.
Yeah.
So if you need immediate gratification, well, I mean, what does that do to your ability to deal with things when they go wrong?
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's hyperbolic discounting is what the phenomenon's called, isn't it? When people think,
you're gonna have to explain that, because that is like way above my head.
It's a perception thing, actually, and it plays out in the physical world as well. So, you know, if a goal is, you know, if you've got a goal to climb a mountain, for example, and you want to climb a bigger mountain, but there's a smaller mountain in front of you. When you're closer to it, the smaller mountain looks bigger, because it hides what's behind it. Yeah. And so your inclination is to do what's in front of you. And it was supported by the whole, you know, the marshmallow experiment, where they gave kids marshmallows. You know, the kids that took the one marshmallow and couldn't wait for the second, later in life were much less successful than the ones who did wait and could, you know, hold off that instant gratification. So hyperbolic discounting, there is a model for it, which is the phenomenon where our brains prioritize goals that are achievable in front of us, rather than ones that are further down the line, which are potentially more important to us. Well,
I think the other aspect of that type of thinking, which I really like, was did you come across Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow? Yeah. So I love all that work he did around, what did they call it? Behavioral economics.
Yeah.
So linking psychology and economic theory, and he really identified like all of the common mental biases, like a confirmation bias and all those sorts of things, where we look for the things that confirm what we already believe.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Validation,
valid, and all that sort of stuff. And what he exposed was actually how bad we are at working out what is a good and bad decision.
Yeah.
And how often we actually make decisions based on gut feeling, which when you analyze it statistically, it's a bad decision, because your chances of getting the result you want are actually statistically less than what the
logically approaching it.
So the old economists used to think we were rational people, and we used to act based on a rational understanding of what would give us the best result. But actually what he proved was that is just not the case. And I think this is all feeds back into this idea of instant gratification. We want what we want now. It's my daughter's birthday at the weekend, and I've sort of delayed, I've prevaricated, whatever, for various reasons. But I've done it because I know I can just get what she wants off Amazon, and I've just
it'll be there.
And I'm going to order it. I've gone halfway through the process. I've got the first bit in my basket. It's there. I've just got to get the second bit. I'll order it today. I'll get it tomorrow. And as long as I order it within the next 15.3 hours.
It'll arrive on time.
And it'll be with me tomorrow. Why do I have to worry? It's like,
well, that's why Amazon have got a buy now button.
You
don't even have to add it to your basket, do you?
I know.
Just hit buy now. And the amount of times I use that, probably I shouldn't admit to, but you hit buy now, and it's going to arrive the next day or whenever it's due. It's interesting how we use our rational brain, if you like, to justify our gut rather than question it.
It's always that way round. It's like
to justify, never to question or challenge.
It's probably one of the biggest misunderstandings I ever had in life, seriously. And I only discovered it a few years ago, because I always thought that we made our decisions based on rational thinking. And I always used to think I was a really rational person, and, there's been times in my life where I've been referred to as Mr. Spock. So not that I've got pointy ears or anything, but.
Well, I can't tell your headphones on. Okay.
Normally is. But then I got involved in this, all the stuff that you and I talk about now, and all the stuff we're doing within the academy. And probably it was only about 7 or 8 years ago that I came across this idea that the way we make decisions is through our gut, our gut feeling, and then we post-rationalize it, and we look for the data that supports that decision. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to about that. It could be, it could be Putin in Russia. It could have been Trump or Biden now in the States. Boris at number 10, or whichever, whoever's running whatever big company, Jeff Bezos at Amazon, Tim, what's his name at Apple. Everybody makes decisions in that way, however much they like to tell you they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is this, there's this whole sort of push for data-driven decision making. But data can be manipulated to support whatever you want it to normally, and that happens.
And data is always backward looking. If you've got data, it's referring to something that's happened in the past. I don't believe, as far as I know, and you might know differently, anybody has created anything, any system that can project into the future and say this is what's going to happen based,
no certainty.
No, exactly. It's like, I mean, that's why
based on previous trends, don't you?
Exactly. So it's like, if anyone who's ever bought like into an ISA or any investment or anything like that, there's, and you see it on TV in the ads, your investment can go down as well as up. Well,
exactly.
Those companies have more data at their fingertips than most, and they still can't do it.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely. There's a counter argument to this whole this whole challenge around gut decision making, because I do think the gut plays a role in decision making. And I know there was a study done. It was a really fascinating study around poker, or sorry, not poker. It was blackjack.
Yeah.
They brought a bunch of students in, and they had two decks, and one was stacked. Well, they were both stacked, but one was stacked in the group's favour, so they won incrementally.
Right.
And the other stack was decked. The other deck was stacked to deliver losses, basically, but over a period of time.
Yeah.
And what they did was they studied these students and their ability to rationally think about see how quickly they could figure out which deck they didn't want to back.
Right. Okay.
Big on. And they had all sorts of measures in place. What was interesting was it took them half an hour to figure that out rationally.
Yeah.
But what they also noticed was 10 minutes into it, their palms would sweat whenever the deck that was stacked in there against them was dealt from.
Wow.
So something in their body worked that out quicker than they could rationally, connect those dots and go, actually, I'm screwed every time they deal from that deck. So there is a role for the gut, but it's understanding what that role is and not letting it dominate.
Well, as we're talking about the gut, because I've looked a lot into like the whole mind body thing because of my personal medical history. It's something I'm incredibly interested in, like how the mind and body work together. And I don't know whether you've come across this, but there's evidence now which says because you've got your gut microbiome, all of the bugs and the yeasts and everything that live in your gut, and everyone's talking about we need to have all the right biomes, and there's all those Yakult yogurts out there that tell you, there's a type of yeast or a sort of fungus. I don't know whether it's yeast, fungus, I don't know what the right term is, but when you get it in your gut, it creates a hunger feeling, a desire within you to eat the type of food that it needs to propagate itself within your gut. So you are actually, when you get let's use the word infected, it's probably the right word. So when you get that yeast inside you, you are no longer in control of your hunger and what your eating habits are. So I think this idea of gut and the way it affects us and how we think and how we feel, I think it's huge. And I think there's research out there now that says that the gut has its own neural networks.
It does.
Like the brain,
can't it? It's independent of the brain.
Absolutely. As your heart does. Your heart has its own neural network.
Well, it's the same. Apparently, your gut is the same sort of cellular structure, isn't it, as your brain as well? It's close to the brain in terms of its makeup. So it operates independently.
So I have no idea how we ended up on that, having started out on customer service. But
just bear with me. I just need to go and get a Yakult.
So, but
I guess it's all tied in, isn't it? Because the more we're understanding about these things, the more levers companies have to pull, to manipulate us as consumers, as customers. And 9 times out of 10 we're not even aware of it. But equally, it goes back to what I was saying about the absence of things. Is where we miss things. We're both sat on chairs. We both sat down on our chairs for this call. Neither of us sort of celebrated or cracked open some champagne the fact that the chair didn't break, because we just take it for granted that it's delivering on its promise of being able to hold us. But the moment something creaks or breaks or snaps, then we recognise that there's an absence, and that's when it becomes a problem. And I think that it goes back to that neutral level that's constantly being pushed. We have phones now and devices. No one has keys on their phones. That wasn't everyone's decision. That was one company did that, and then suddenly, as consumers, we all thought, well, actually, who wants keys anymore? None of us. And so everyone had to then migrate to that to catch up. And you know, delivery, speed of delivery, you know, you've got companies now delivering same day. I know in some places Amazon deliver within an hour.
Yeah.
You know, that's just pushing that level up constantly. But you know, you made an interesting point about thinking about all of our customers. You know, think about all the relationships that we have. Do we always deliver to all those relationships?
Well, I think that's the key thing, because it's like, you know, we're all spinning plates and juggling lots and lots of different things, and it's like, how do you make a priority on that? And you know, and really that is the same logistical problem if you're a delivery company and if you're a person. It's like, how do I deliver what it is I need to deliver to all the people and all those relationships through the course of a day, a week, you know, whatever. So and that's what I'm really interested in, actually. It's like, I like the idea that, you know, we are driven as people. I mean, you know, you're talking about the neutral level always moving up, and that's driven because as beings, as sentient beings, you know, we have this desire to grow, to improve, to make things better. You know, that is what, in many ways, that's the essence of what being human is. You know, you can trace that back to, you know, that branch in history where we broke from the, you know, the other animals, you know. And it's the human journey has been one of making the human experience better in every possible way. So I get that, and that process is only going to carry on because and it's going to continue to accelerate because we've got the technology now that leverages our sort of human abilities. We can now leverage with technological abilities. So, you know, all those people who are ruining how fast things are moving, you better let go of that, because it's only going to keep accelerating, you know.
But the thing is as well, I think, you know, as humans, our drive has always been to master our environment. You know, when we look back at sort of tribal days, when we were at the, you know, vulnerable to the environment, you know, because it might be a saber-toothed tiger or, you know, extreme weather conditions or whatever. The more we master that environment, the more we create new environments to master, and that's what's happening. You know, so it's never ending. We're never going to reach an end and go, right, we've nailed it, guys.
No, we're never.
You know, that's why we're off, you know, exploring space and doing other things, because, you know, we want to conquer the environment and control the environment. So it serves us best. And as a consequence, we're constantly evolving just as our environments are.
I think, you know, then you get into the issue of, okay, well, how does that help me in my, you know, it's like, you know, the last 2 years, for the first time in my life, you know, I've seen supermarket shelves empty, you know. Now there's multiple reasons for that. In the UK, delivery drivers is one of them, but there's certainly other factors. And again, that's another level of that sort of neutral level of expectation. You know, we've just got to a point where we don't expect there to be any shortage. And that then creates an expectation of what life is like. And I think this circles back nicely to the idea of customer service, because ultimately, at some point, don't we have to have a level of gratitude for the sophistication of the society we live in and the securities it gives us and the services it gives us? And actually, where do you ever see that? You know, where do you ever see anywhere someone saying, actually, yeah, it's really great to live in this society that we live in, because, you know, essentially, are there homeless people in the Western world? Yes, there are, but they're a minor minority in percentage terms to all of those people who've got a clean, dry home. You know, they've got running water, they've got electricity, they've got all the sanitation. You know, by and large, the vast majority of us don't have to worry about basic survival issues.
Yeah, fundamental stuff.
Yeah. But yet all we get fed, the propaganda we get fed, is what a disaster the world is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a real issue around that as well. It's like we have this massive instant gratification need that is being fulfilled, and at the same time it's not being matched with a sort of a gratitude for the infrastructure that exists to deliver that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a potentially a big issue for how things evolve, because I don't know, for me, I've learned the importance of gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, and not taking things for granted.
Yeah, I do think that is lost on most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole notion of gratitude, but even for the simple things, you know, we take things for granted. It goes back to that neutral level, doesn't it? When you miss it when it's absent, you take it for granted.
Yeah.
When it's delivered day in, day out, I took it for granted that my chair wouldn't break when I sat there. You know, I took it for granted that, you know, there was this drink tasted nice when I had some. You know, we are at risk of creating a bit of an entitled society.
Well, I think we're there, to be honest. I think we've created an entitled society, but what we don't have is the counterbalances to that. We say, okay, great that we've got a society that can deliver that, because there's still plenty of societies around the world that don't have that.
Yeah.
That, you know, that can't rely on the basic securities that we've got. You know, and I think there's a big issue there in terms of people looking at the society we've got and criticizing it without sort of doing that comparison about what still is out there in the world.
Yeah.
That, you know, and people who don't have those benefits that we've got. And so I think it's really easy to sort of get bound up with our petty little delivery issues, you know, or customer care that didn't come, and actually we lose sight of the bigger stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But we also, you know, I think this raises an interesting question then, doesn't it? You know, would you prefer consistency or parity around the country? I've got a cat in here now, eminently. Or do you want these areas to race ahead? You know, is there an onus on bringing people up to the level before you then race ahead further? You know, and addressing things like the societies that don't have the basics, and rallying together to do that, or do we continue to you know, be pioneers and push forward and leave, you know, a bigger gap between us and some other areas of the world?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I think I'm not sure either of us are sort of qualified to go down that path, to be honest. But I think there's been a big something that's sort of come to me that's, I think, in that space on the back of what's happened with COVID in the last 2 years. If you look globally at how governments have been able to create the money to make sure that economies haven't collapsed in the last 2 years, and yet you look at some of the atrocious conditions that some people live in globally. So one of the things that has always stuck with me from quite early on is I came across some stats which said that about 3 million children a year die through diseases of poverty. So whether it's sort of poor sanitation, poor water, you know, the not having the vaccines that we take for granted. And about £3 a week would save them. Now, if you look at what it would actually cost, if those figures are correct, and the figures I saw came from the World Health Organization, so I have to assume they're valid. But if you think those figures are correct, in terms of money to solve that particular problem, it's peanuts compared to what has been generated and spent to keep Western economies going.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's got nothing to do with money. It's all about political will.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're now into like a massively different
thing. Do you care enough?
Do you care enough? Absolutely. It brings it back to a circle. Maybe that's a good point for us to finish. Do you care enough? Because ultimately that's what customer service is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.